Hey folks, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. And today on the channel, we are taking a look at Trudvang Legends. And this is a game from CMON. Now, Trudvang Legends is a game that I heard a lot of bad things about. And you know what? I think it's actually pretty good. It's pretty good, actually. I've had a lot of fun playing it. This video is not going to be a comprehensive overview of the game and its systems. We will talk briefly about those things, but the point of this video is really to give you all some positives and negatives about the game to determine if maybe it's something you want to buy because maybe you haven't purchased yet. And that leads me to my first positive, is that this game is really affordable right now. Especially in comparison to other games of its size and the amount of stuff you get. I think people were so disappointed with the game that they have been unloading all of their used copies or even their unused copies because they just don't want to play the game. And I've seen copies go for really cheap on eBay, and that's how I got mine. I got mine in a big bundle with 2 expansions and the stretch goals. On eBay, you can find the stretch goal box for under $30, and those often, for other games like this, those often go for, hundreds of dollars. You can get the base game for around $30. I've seen a full kind of legendary pledge, which is probably close to all in for, I think, $81 on eBay. So you can get the game for not a lot of money. Now, since I bought the game at retail or at eBay, I didn't have any kind of time and money invested into the game. As far as, the whole crowd fund issue with this game, I didn't have any anticipation to manage. I know that there was some trouble with the campaign. They had kind of designed themselves into a corner. They scrapped everything and completely redesigned the game from the ground up. And so I imagine that some of the backers, they didn't get the game that they originally pledged for. It took forever to come out. People were waiting for years, and I didn't have to deal with any of that. And so my expectations, my anticipation was kept in check. And so I was just able to buy the game. And because I didn't have that anticipation, I was just able to enjoy it for the most part. There are some issues with it, definitely. And some of those issues I think can be taken care of with some basic house rules. And we'll talk a little bit about the house rules that I am using. So a very brief overview. This is a kind of typical open world adventure sandbox board game. You have a book of sagas, and these sagas are all the stories. There are 20 different missions, 20 different scenarios in the game. Some of those are side quests, some of those are main quests, and your ability to access those side quests and main quests are dictated by how you progress through the game, some of the choices that you make. There are, I think, five different characters that you can play as. The characters will have a card, so I am playing right now with a party of 2. There are solo rules to go lone wolf with a companion, but they're not that great, and so I think I would just recommend playing 2-handed, which is totally manageable and a lot of fun. So I am playing with Ladana and Mailing. Each one of these characters will have a class associated with them. They will have a health total that you will keep track of, and a number of runes that you will add to a bag. So this game does have some bag building mechanisms, and when you are performing a skill test or you are in combat, you will draw a certain number of rune tokens from your bag, and then that will dictate how well you do. I think this is a mixed bag. There's some issues with it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you will set up your guys on the map. You will populate your map with enemies depending on the adventure that you are using. The game also has a whole deck of story cards, and these are things that will be unlocked as you are playing. Some of those story cards will be locations that you will actually slot into little pockets on the board. So the board does change, and that's one of the pluses. There are light legacy elements to this game that I really enjoy. The game world kind of changes as you play, as you meet new NPCs, as you discover new things, as you discover new quests and things. You will slot those into the board and this sideboard over here, which we'll take a little closer look at in a bit. But I like that. I like those light legacy elements. I think those are pretty cool. Some of these will be enemy cards, some of these will be little stories, and some of these will be event cards that you will add to your event deck. And as you are traveling around the world, you will draw a random event. Some of these events will move the enemies on the map. Sometimes you will have little stat tests to pass, or sometimes good things. Sometimes you will be able to heal. But this event deck will grow and change as you play the game. Additionally, there is this adventure board here, and these are all the points of interest. These are all the major things that you will discover on your quest, and these are kept hidden in this board. Each quest and side quest will have an adventure sheet, and you will slide that adventure sheet into the board. And then as you are reading stories from the book of sagas, it will tell you to reveal point of interest A. So you will take that out, you will see what A is, and then you will usually be told to add the corresponding letter as a token onto the board. And so that is a place that you want to go. Often you will have 2, maybe 3 different points of interest on the map, and you can choose which one you want to go to at any time. And often those will lead to other adventures or other side quests. And I think that is really cool. One interesting thing about the side quests, and I think they did this for balancing, so a group of heroes doesn't just do 2 or 3 side quests and then they become too powerful for the main quest, is when you are on a side quest, you don't gain any experience for combat unless the Book of Sagas tells you to. So you can't just go and farm enemies in a side quest to help beat a main quest. But as you are adventuring, you are taking your characters out, you are going to different points of interest, you are meeting NPCs, you are reading stories from the book, deciding where to go, deciding what to do. Usually the missions will kind of culminate in a big battle. You will fight a boss. That saga will end, or that story will end, and then you will be allowed, on the next time you play, you will be allowed to choose which adventure you want to go to depending on what you have unlocked. In addition to the map and the point of interest board, we also have this sideboard over here, which also has pockets. And these are where you're going to slot all of the kind of ongoing things that are changing your world. So right now I have my 2 adventures that I can go on. I have the Thief of Dark Woods, which is a main adventure, and I have the Shadow of the Garm, which is a side quest. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to choose the side quest next. Here we have all of these different phases, and these are the phases 1 through 6 that you will take on each turn. Right now, I only have phases 2, 3, and 4. So on a turn, I travel, I engage with enemies or personalities, NPCs on the map, and then I can explore a point of interest. And during the engage phase, you will also engage in combat if you are sharing a region with an enemy. And at this time, if there are no enemies, then that is when you will draw a card from your event deck. So it's very easy to keep track of where you are in the game. You can just use this token to move through the different phases. As you unlock other new things to do on the phases, you will draw those phase cards from the deck of story cards here, and you will slot those in. And so that will just add something that you can do. I also have Jarl Oktar here. He's right off camera here. This game does take up a lot of space, and I think that is a little bit of a negative. And so I can barely fit it on my 3x4 table, and it's pretty hard to film because it does take up like every inch of this table. But over here is an NPC that I unlocked during a quest here that I was on, our Jarl Oktar, and he comes with this little token here. And so when I play again, he will be spawned in his wild lands. And so I can set that token over here on the map in the wild lands, and then I can visit Oktar and he can give me a little bonus. On this adventure board here also, you will keep track of different rules that you have unlocked. Right now I only have rules for leveling up and defeating, but all of those little pockets make setting up the game pretty easy, because as the game world changes, you just slot things in, and then when you're done playing, you fold up your boards, put them in the box. When you're ready to play again, you take out your boards, you unfold them, and everything is in its place for play. And that is really cool. I like that. It's a little, yes, it's overproduced, but I do think it's interesting. Another big plus for me is the quests are relatively short, especially for the solo player. I think you could go through a quest in about an hour or an hour and a half, and there are 20 different quests. And so 20 quests in only 126 pages. You know, the passages aren't very long. There is some reading, but it doesn't feel like you're reading a novel while you are playing. I think it's a good balance of using a storybook and a board game with the board game component. So it never feels like kind of one is being used over the other. And so far, I have found the writing to be pretty well done. It's entertaining. I was engaged as I was playing the game, and I did want to see what happened. And you know, some of those choices that you make can have a pretty big impact on the game. So I'm going to choose to do the Shadow of the Garm. This is a side quest. And so again, it says this is a side quest unless stated otherwise. Heroes don't gain experience points for defeating enemies. So this is the introduction here. You camp for the night, the fire is warm, the roasting hares smell savory, and you tell stories of ancient battles and your exploits. Suddenly, his approach unseen, an old man appears, tall and wiry, leaning heavily on a gnarled staff. You see the ancient scars of the pox on his face behind a snowy, ragged beard. He searches for your voices by swinging his head one way then the next. You see the milky film over his eyes and understand that the pox robbed him of his sight. Might you spare a little food for old Falk? He says with a raspy voice. So this tells us how to set up this adventure. We will take adventure sheet 6 and place it inside the points of interest board, which we've already done. We will reveal enemy cards 100, 101, and 102. So let's take a look at those cards here. So these are the enemies. So 100, 101, and 102. 100, 101, and 102. So these are the basic enemies that we will be fighting. Now, sometimes enemies also do appear on this points of interest board, and those will usually be more powerful enemies, elite enemies, some bosses and mini bosses. So we have a forest troll, a draugr, and a garm. And so that is their health. That's how much damage they do. That is their defense. And then depending on the card that you draw for the enemy attack, they will have maybe some special powers that will be triggered. And so these can be slotted into your adventure board over on the side, so you always have those handy. Again, I really like that. There's a space for everything in this game, and I think it's pretty good. All right, let's see what else we need to do for our setup. We need to place 2 draugrs in these regions. We need to place 2 forest trolls in those regions and 2 garms in those regions. Now, I'm not going to go through all of that. I will show you right now that I am using my League of Dungeoneers standees to play this game. I am using these guys as my draugr. I'm using these guys as my garm, and I am using these guys as my forest trolls. We'll talk a little bit. I think it's a pretty big negative, the minis in this game. They are absolutely unnecessary, and they just take up a lot of space. For my characters here, I am using this red-based character here, this girl with the axe, because Ladana has an axe. So this is Ladana, and this is my ranger meleeing there. And so I have slotted these into color bases that do correspond with the different colors of the bag, so it's very easy to keep track of. So after you've set up your board and you've replaced any cards or anything, then we are given a choice here. Share the fire and spare some food, or send the old man away. Well, I'm not a total jerk, so let's share the fire and spare some food. Turn to C615. Okay, so you offer old Falk a place near the fire and half a hare all to himself. The man gobbles it down as if he hadn't tasted real food in ages. May the gods protect you, he says, bowing his head. Each hero gains 2 chronicle points. Chronicle points are a thing that you keep track of on your health track, and those can be spent as a currency to trigger different powers. I think this mechanism is really underutilized, and this is one of the main things that I am modifying for a house rule for my next adventure. We'll talk about this towards the end of this video. So each hero in the party gains 2 chronicle points, and then you turn to entry number 11. Okay, entry number 11. Old Falk returns from the fire and walks away into the darkness, but he only takes a few more steps when he stops and turns. Okay, so then you would read that. I'm not going to read all of that. And then you would sleeve world card CSO3, Night of the Cold Moon. I would draw that card and sleeve it where it needs to go. This will introduce a new phase. So story card 59 is a 5th phase. So I will add that to my phase track. So that's one thing I will have to do on each turn. And then I would turn to entry number 08. And then that would reveal one of the first points of interest. The points of interest here is J. And so then I would go to my point of interest. I would reveal that, set up whatever needs to be set up, and then my adventure would start. So I think all of that is really cool. I like all of that stuff alike. I really do like the branching paths in the game. I like that you have to unlock missions and side quests. There seems to be a choice. There seems to be quite a bit of replay value just in this slim book and just in this relatively small deck of story cards. In general, I like the overall vibe of this game. It gives me a feeling of Skyrim. It's kind of this Norse and Celtic mythology or Celtic mythology kind of mixed together. The characters are interesting, and I think there's a lot going for it. And because I didn't have that built-up anticipation or that built-up hype from being a backer, I didn't have to wait. I didn't have to go through all of that drama of the game getting scrapped and then redesigned. I was just able to experience and enjoy the game just as I used to back in the day when I would just go to a store and buy a game that looks interesting I didn't have all this anticipation for. And because of that, and because of the things I've shown so far, I am really enjoying playing Trudvang Legends. I've had a lot of fun with this game. One of the major negatives though, and that has to do with this kind of modern trend in gaming, and that is to move completely away from dice. And this game seems to have done everything it could except use dice. And in almost every instance, I think just using dice would have made this game more fun, more dramatic, and a lot faster. The combat system is very convoluted in this game, and it takes quite a bit of time to get through. When you are dealing with combat in a board game, there are really only 3 possible outcomes. Either you win, you lose, or you tie. When you're just rolling dice, just give me 2d6, I roll those, I look at a number, I look at a target number. If I pass, I win. If I fail, I lose. If I tie, it's a draw. That's very fast, and it's the same thing. You arrive at the same conclusion that this convoluted system uses in this game. And so combat can take quite a bit of time, and it can be a drag. When you go into combat, your characters will have a deck of feats, and these are things that they can do during combat. When you go into combat, you will draw 4 cards from your deck. This deck is upgradable, and I think that's another kind of minus, is that the character upgrades don't feel very significant. So as your character is gaining experience points through combat, and you spend 3 experience points to unlock a new card, it just doesn't feel that good. It doesn't feel, I'm not satisfied with the character progression. I think another pretty big drawback is the way that items are used. I really don't like games where items can only be used one time. And what's even worse in this game is as you start gaining more items, at the beginning of each mission, you will actually stack those on top of each other, and then you can only use the item that's on top. So you kind of have to prepare your deck before you go into an adventure, and you don't really know what that adventure is in store. Why can't I just use all of my items? And I know that, I think it was like Gloomhaven that kind of introduced this idea of items like swords or armor being one-use items, and then you couldn't use them for the rest of the adventure. That just is never something I like, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. It's mainly the combat and this chronicle point system that I think needs some tuning. But at the beginning of combat, you will draw 4 cards, and these are the cards that you can use. I could use Silence 1, I could use Lindworm's Blood 1, I could use Hand of Death, or Healing Food. These 3 are skills, these are an attack. So I would place all 4 of those out, and then this is Ladana. So I would take Ladana's bag, and she has a bunch of different runes in this bag based on her starting rune count, and based on any runes that maybe I've unlocked while I'm playing, I can add those to my bag. And then I start drawing those 3 at a time. So I draw those out, and I look at what they are. These are bad. These get slotted in your miss track. Now the miss track is something that I do like because this is a pressure luck element, and I like pressure luck things in games. So this gets slotted here. As your mist track fills up, you will have to deal with different consequences. If you end your combat turn with only the blue area filled in, then you get a bonus, and you get a bonus of any blue tokens that might be in your outcome track here. So I would gain a chronicle point, or maybe I would gain an additional point of damage if you had that there. That is super cool. If your mist track fills up to the black area, that's neutral and nothing happens. However, if your mist track fills all the way up to the red, then you've busted. You've tried to press your luck and you've gone over, and then the bad things happen. So you might take additional damage in addition to the attack damage from the enemy. That is cool. I like that a lot. What I don't like is having to spend these. You lock your runes into the slots on your cards, you try to fill those up, you press your luck to draw 3 more, you do the same thing, hoping you don't fill up your mist track. And then once you've decided to stop pressing your luck, you can initiate the cards that have their rune slots filled. You can do the thing, you can either heal or do damage. And then the next player will do that, and then the enemies will attack. And the enemies attack pretty simply. You just draw one of these enemy attack cards to see the bonus that they get to their damage, or to see if you draw one of these runes to see if they get to trigger their special power. And then you apply the damage to the heroes, you apply the damage to the enemies, and then that's it. So that's one round of combat. To engage in that combat again, you have to set everything back up. You have to take all of your runes out, put those back in the bag. You have to take these out, and then either put these in your discard spot there, and then you will draw your next cards on your next turn. And all of that could have just been done by doing this. You know, it's the same outcome. And I never felt like there was any kind of clever choices to be made. You just kind of always slotted where you need to slot your runes, and there wasn't really any choices. The choices in this press your luck system, which I think is pretty cool. And so I would have greatly preferred this game just use dice for combat and also dice for skill checks. And skill checks are very, very hard in this game because you will often be told to do a skill check based on one of these runes. So maybe based off your agility rune, this leaf here. And the skill chest might say 2. And so what you would do is you would go to your bag and you would draw 7 tokens out, hoping to draw those 2 leaves. Now she only has 2 leaves. A lot of the skill tests I saw had a skill check number of 3. So there was no way that she could ever pass one of those skill tests. And a lot of times the skill tests are the things that unlock side quests. And so by making those really difficult, it just kind of keeps you from experiencing really cool things in the game. And I don't like that at all. I would have rather just had some bonuses, roll some dice, and I would have liked if the characters had more of a chance to pass their skill tests. Now, one of the house rules that I'm developing, because I don't like the combat, I'm not really doing anything with combat. Combat is what it is. I'm not really messing with that. But what I am messing with is this chronicle point system, because I think it's underutilized. You guys know that I like a game that has a system where you have a currency that you can choose to spend to do cool things. And so usually you spend these chronicle points to trigger special abilities on your items, or maybe some advanced abilities on your cards. But I am developing a system where I can also spend those to add successes to a skill test, and I can also spend these to heal when I am in an empty region, because it can be really hard to heal in this game, especially if you don't just get the cards you need and the runes you need during combat. You can very quickly die, and death isn't terrible in this game, but it is hard to heal. It is hard to heal back up. So the house rules that I have played with, and I played with them in my last game, and I think they worked pretty well. It definitely made the game easier, but for me, that means the game is more fun because I just want to experience the game. You know, I'm not here trying to test my ability to play Trudvang Legends. I just want to have fun. And so what I'm saying is, with these chronicle points, when I'm doing a skill test, I can choose to spend 1 chronicle point to add a success to a skill test. That's super cool. And then also when I'm in an empty region where there's no points of interest or there are no enemies, during the travel phase, I can take an additional action, and that is a camping action. And for 1 Chronicle point, I can heal 2 HP. Now, because I'm adding 2 additional things to spend Chronicle points on, I'm also playing with a house rule where whenever I gain any amount of Chronicle points, I gain an additional 1 Chronicle point. So that just allows me to engage with this system a little more and makes it easier to heal and also easier to pass some of those impossible skill tests. And playing like that, I have had a lot of fun. Yeah, this game is cool. I'm really enjoying it, and I think those 2 very simple house rules don't change things too much. I do want to talk briefly about the minis and just how useless the minis are in this game. You guys know I'm not really a fan of minis, and one of the big reasons why is the amount of space that they take up, and also the resources dedicated to making these from a game design point of view. You know, designing minis takes time. Having the injection molds takes time. It is very, very often the main reason why a game is delayed is because there is a delay in the manufacture of the minis, or there's a mistake in the minis. And this game doesn't use the minis in any interesting way. There are no spaces to move. There are no battle maps to move. There's no facing. They are they are only used to represent where things are on the map. And this is the box of all the minis. It takes up more than half the space in this box. It adds weight. It makes the box bigger. You know, it makes the box more expensive to ship. And I can fit all of the cardboard minis I need to play in this game in a little tub like that and put that in there. Look how much space I have saved. Without the minis, I could put all of the expansions and all the stretch goals in the base box. And that's exactly what I am going to do. I am going to keep this game because I am enjoying it. I'm going to take all of the minis and I'm going to see if maybe a Dungeon Dive patron wants them in a giveaway. And I will just send them all of the plastic from Trudvang Legends because I find it really unnecessary. And man, you know, Simon, it's cool mini or not, but for some reason, it's always cool mini. You guys, how about you embrace the or not part of your name and release these games without minis? You would save time, you would save space, you would save on shipping fees. So yeah, I don't like the minis in this game. I think they're absolutely useless, and I think these League of Dungeoneers cardboard standees are great. You know, one of the things too is when you come across an elite enemy in this game, you are told to take a token. I don't even know where those tokens are because I'm not using them. But you are told to take a token and then stack your elite enemy on the token. And that just, you know, it's hard to see. It doesn't really work very well. You have to move 2 things. And so if you have these cardboard standees, you know, you can just take a red base and put that mini in the red base. And hey, now that is an elite enemy. So much better. And the art matches the board better, I think. You know, I don't have these, because I'm not a painter, I don't have these globs of like brown and gray on the board that just kind of, you know, breaks the immersion for me. So yeah, that's it. That is my video on Trudvang Legends. I do recommend this game. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I know this game took a beating. People really didn't like it, and they're unloading their copies for next to nothing. And so, you know, this might be one of those kinds of hidden gems. And all you would need are a few basic house rules. There's all kinds of house rules on BGG, but I found a lot of them to be really kind of cumbersome, and I don't think that they address the things that I was looking to address. And just adding 2 different ways to spend those Chronicle points for me made the game a lot more fun and a lot more manageable. And I am greatly looking forward to diving more into this game. So I think I have covered all of my points here. Yes, just looking at my outline. And so yeah, maybe take a chance on Trudvang Legends. You might be surprised. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.